To order. With us today are committee members Deb Poland and committee member Mary Fay is dealing with some family stuff today, so she can't be with us. And see Councilwoman McGinnis and Councilman Danowitz as well here, and Peter Pertera and Rick Ledwith here as well. And the mayor is also online. So
we have as well, Mr. Chairman, Dwayne Martin, our Director of Community Development.
Sorry, Dwayne. See you there. All right. We will move to item number 2, approval of the minutes. Without objection. Let's see, those approved. And then we'll move to item B. Mr. Ledwith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution is actually an amendment to a previous resolution where we were utilizing $150,000 of ARPA funds to hire a consultant to assist with a town-wide crash study, as well as an update to our bicycle facilities plan. Around the same time that we were going out to bid for this process, the council, as we know, adopted a Vision Zero resolution. So we have modified the scope of the project to include the consultant working with the town and the Vision Zero task force to help develop and implement a Vision Zero action plan. And the additional costs of the town for this change of scope and services would be an additional $150,000 that we would be requesting through ARPA. Now, through the RFP process, we've selected a firm called FHI Tool to assist the town and the task force with our Vision Zero process. And FHI has joined us informally at the last 2 Vision Zero meetings and will join us formally at the next meeting later this month. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pause there, turn things over to Dwayne Martin, our Director of Community Services, and Dwayne can walk us through the RFP process and what was entailed with that process. Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Dwayne Martin, Director of Community Development. So yes, the project, if you will, path changed since where we started because of unfortunate turn of events in town, and the town's direction towards Vision Zero initiative. So I just want to run through quickly to give a better understanding of some of the scope elements that were added to go into the Vision Zero initiative. A lot of it has to do with outreach. It's just a project of this type is challenging because it's not focused on one street or one neighborhood even. It's throughout the entire town for the most part. We want to make sure that we engage everybody that we can through this process. So some examples of that are an online crash dashboard. This will be something that will be added to the project webpage using data from the police department to inform the public of some of the crashes that have been occurring over a period of time. It'll also be good information for the town and its consultant for decision-making purposes. I mentioned the project website. The consultant, we already have a Vision Zero website, but the consultant would add more content and information for the town to be able to see where the project is going and learn about some of the meetings and things that are planned. There'll also be a project email. Town staff will be involved in email, but I have a feeling because of the size of the project, we'll need assistance from the consultant. So the project email will be monitored by them. There'll be a public survey and also an interactive map. This is an approach that we used for our Center Master Plan project, which was really well received. This is an opportunity for the town and the consultant to get out into the public and engage and get feedback of the survey and get information from them on that interactive map. There'll be 2 public information meetings, and a road safety audit. Road safety audit doesn't sound like it's outreach, but the way that it would work for this project, it would be in that we're going to engage the residents, business owners, property owners along a selected corridor for up to a mile long. This will also give the town staff some guidance as to potential other road safety audits that we might want to conduct after that, this one with a consultant. There'll be up to 12 stakeholder meetings. That'll include town staff and other stakeholders like the Pedestrian Bicycle Committee or other interested parties to provide information to the town and its consultant through the project. As town manager Ledwith mentioned, we have already started our Vision Zero task force meeting. So our consultant will be much more involved in these. They'll prepare agendas, they'll do presentations and provide guidance to the task force as we work through this project. They'll also assist the town with coordinating with the Connecticut Department of Transportation, which is something that I've been concerned with all along. As we work through our Vision Zero initiative, a lot of the crashes that occur are on state highways. So our consultant will help the town staff bridge that gap, coordinate with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I already mentioned the Pedestrian Bicycle Committee. Obviously, we need to engage them as a vulnerable user and other stakeholders. And then as they get to towards the end of the project, they will do a presentation for the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee, as well as for the town manager, town staff, and others. Eventually, the action plan will be submitted to the town to be used for guidance. There'll be short and long-term data-driven measurable goals that will be provided. They'll also give us an annual reporting template that we can use to track progress and submit that information to the town council to provide necessary updates. So that's a quick summary to give you an idea as to what was expanded upon in the scope and how that correlates to the increased cost. If you have any questions, I will gladly answer. Thank you.
Are there questions from the committee members? Pullen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just a quick question. The company that was chosen, you said is called FHI Tool.
Yep.
Do they happen to be a local company, a Connecticut-based company at all? I was just curious.
Yes, and to be clear, it's FHI Studio and Tool Design. So FHI Studio, they have engineers on staff, but they're more so of a planning organization, whereas Tool has more of an engineering background. And in fact, a few of the people that work for those companies that are engaged in this project live in town, excuse me. So they are a local company, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, absolutely.
if you don't mind, I'd like to give a brief update on the funding status, our ARPA funding status, because this will impact. If you remember during the budget workshop process, we gave an overview of our funding status at that time. And with the original $150,000 earmarked on that spreadsheet and summary at the time, we were at a total of $12,751,377 in ARPA funds that were available at that time. With this $150,000 modification, we would be at $12.6 million in total funds available for future ARPA projects. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And then, so on the planning that's going to go forth through this, we anticipate to have actionable items for us. When do you think, Mr. Manager or Mr. Martin?
So we have two phases that will be happening through this process in our work with the Vision Zero Task Force. So we have the more immediate phase that'll happen over the course of the next year. Within the year that the action plan is being developed, our task force has been working together to identify shorter term projects that we could implement this year while we are developing the action plan. So we had a list of, Mr. Martin can correct me, but I'd say there are about 40 or 50 different projects that were identified as short-term things that we could implement. Not all of them, certainly, but identify a number of those projects that we can do this year while the action plan's being implemented. And then the action plan will identify a long-range plan to implement larger type of projects over the course of the next 10 years. Those may include, and we've talked about this publicly, roundabouts at certain intersections in town. Those are the kinds of projects that will be more expensive and would take more time, obviously, to design and implement. We would definitely be taking advantage of grants through those projects as well. There's a Safe Streets for All grant that we will be applying for during this upcoming schedule, and that will be part of our long-range plan as well, as identifying grant funds to fund the more expensive, longer-term projects that we identify. Mr. Martin, I don't know if there's anything you would add to that through you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a couple things. We are interested in having some quick build projects completed soon, hopefully within the summertime. And the task force, as Manager Ledwith has identified, has come up with a number of those that could be applied. But there are many that could happen even sooner as far as outreach and engagement and education through our consultant and the police department's assistance. And the action plan, the Vision Zero action plan, is required in many cases in order to qualify for grants, including the Safe Streets for All grant. Having the action plan completed puts the town in a very good position and in front of many other Connecticut communities in being able to obtain those grants. Thank you.
Great. So I think that just to be more precise about that, they will meet shortly through the recommendations of this now onboarded contractor. They will then provide us, and we will see action on these items soon, probably end of summer.
Yes, it would be our plan to identify and implement a number of projects this summer.
I think some of those items are based around school areas, I would imagine, and just wanted to like keep that in mind to how if we're going to put those items into play, how that would impact. A lot of those areas are high traffic areas, and you guys are more the expert than I am, but that would obviously impact traffic and also improve the ability of people getting to school safely. So I would just hope that we keep that in mind in regards to how the timeline of taking action on some of these things. I saw some of the items that we were looking at, a lot of them were around schools, and I just want that to be kind of flagged, because I think some of these things may take some time. Some of them may not take that much time at all. But I would like for us to set a goal if there are items that can be done soon, and if they're built around school zones, that they are ready for the next school year. Is that something that we can work towards?
Yes, absolutely. It's something we would do anyways. Yeah, we won't start a project if for example, if something is being, designed or changed around Morley, it would be done prior to the start of the school year, not while the school year is commencing.
That would be great. Much appreciated on the clarity on that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, I don't think we have any communications.
I just had one update, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. I know you asked for an update on cannabis revenue. Would it be appropriate to talk about that under communication?
Yeah, and just generally where we are with our licenses at this point.
So we have one license was approved back in 2022, back in the fall. I think we've talked about that. That's an establishment that will be built on Boulevard, essentially right on the corner of Boulevard and Prospect. And then on Friday, we approved the second establishment, the second of two retail establishments in town. As you recall, our ordinance that was adopted by the council back in May of 22 did limit us to 2 establishments. The second one was approved on Friday, and that is on the corner of Park Road and Prospect. You know, based on information that we've been working with from the state, I mean, the estimate that the state had originally been using in terms of revenue per establishment, we're looking at about $4 million in revenue per establishment. However, I do think that number is a little low based on some numbers that are coming in through the first quarter of 23. Back in January, the state had $13 million in cannabis sales. February, that number rose to 18.4 million. And in March, that number further rose to $22 million in revenue. That's statewide. However, if you were to break that revenue out by establishment, I think the $4 million number that we were contemplating is probably double, if not possibly even triple that $4 million estimate. So, and as you may recall, we will collect 3%, a 3% sales tax on that revenue, which is good news. And we would, we're restricted in terms of usage of that revenue. So we can use that revenue to make improvements to streetscapes in and around those establishments. We can use the revenue to fund education programs for youth employment and training programs. We can fund services for individuals released from the custody of the Commissioner of Correction. We can fund mental health and addiction services. We can fund youth service bureaus and fund municipal juvenile review boards, as well as fund efforts to promote further civic engagement. So those are the restrictions that we have on that revenue. But I do think the revenue that we estimated at $120,000 per establishment might be a little low. It's probably going to come in potentially double that, if not triple. So maybe $240,000, $360,000 per establishment. I'll pause there through you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions that the committee had?
That's great. I think this is probably more in a different committee, but you know, I think we'd love to kind of know how the how the town is dealing with these new establishments, any kind of additional costs that are being bared by having them, and just want to know how we're doing with these as we place the cap on them after the state removed it, and just want to have a better idea of, you know, what that means for us, and as opposed to surrounding communities that may have not done that. Because I think, as we saw in this last budget cycle, everything is more expensive, and just want to know if, you know, we aren't limiting ourselves on potential revenue there. If there are people that are exploring or want to come here, we're able to do it in a safe and productive manner, that we we just have an idea of what kind of data points that we have as a town to ensure that we could do that, or we should stay where we are.
Absolutely, through you, Mr. Chairman. We will keep the appropriate committees apprised of our experience with both establishments as they come on board, and any impact that they have on, for example, public safety and traffic, things like that. We do, Dwayne, I'm not sure if I'm thinking maybe June or July for Butter. That might be their target for opening. They are going through the construction phase right now. I know they've applied for and received building permits, and anyone who's driven by there has probably noticed there's a lot of work happening at that site. So if I recall correctly, it was sometime later this spring, early summer that they would be opening.
That's super helpful. And then just a question, we'll just receive an update on the revenue generated, because this is I think one of the first of its kind of local tax revenue that we would get through a state law in this this manner, in the way we're withholding this tax. I'm not really phrasing that well, but it's a new kind of idea here in Connecticut. We would love to know how, do we get updates quarterly, end of the year, that sort of thing? Or are we just going to get updates as we get revenue projections?
Absolutely. We'll keep this committee apprised of any revenue generated, and that we'll work with our Director of Finance, Peter Privatera, on setting up a process for the collection of that tax and how that may happen, whether it's monthly, quarterly. Still a little bit to be learned through, as you said, this new process for the state of Connecticut and for municipalities.
One last question, is the newest applicant also a social equity applicant? Because I believe the first one that went through.
First one was, good question, Mr. Chairman. I can follow up on that and find out.
Great. Looking to see if anyone else has any questions on this item. Mr. Zdanowicz.
Thank you. And I think Rick and maybe Peter, a two-part question. You had mentioned the funds potentially going to mental health issues. As we know, there's a big increase in the schools. Can we steer those funds directly to the mental health issues in school? Does it have to be townwide, and how specific does that have to be? And then the second part of the question, to tag off of Chairman Sweeney's question, is, when we look at the tax revenue coming in, and we just have to pay attention to the economic principle of law of diminishing returns to make sure that you don't put up too many of them, and we're getting the same amount if we had 2 versus 3 or 4. So I know the committee will look at that. I just wanted to say it publicly. So thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's a great question on the utilization of funds towards mental health programs within the school district. We'll research that. I'm not exactly sure if that would be an appropriate use. It sounds like it might be, but let us do some research on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Boland?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Did you give us an indication of when the second store will likely open? Could you?
They're based on the timeline of the first establishment. It'd probably be 6 months or so.
Okay.
To apply for permits, go through the build out. I think there's a little bit more work that would need to be done at that site than the first site. So I'm guessing at around 6 months, Councilor Poland.
Thank you. And that the restaurant that's currently there is closing then?
It has been closed. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to item number 4. Mr. Fedwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn things over here to our Director of Finance, Mr. Privatera, who will go through the most recent operational fiscal update, which is good news. Our overall surplus has moved up to $5.1 million, and Mr. Privatera will go through the details of that. During the budget adoption process last week, we did talk a little bit about one of the key drivers to that surplus, and that's our interest earnings in our short-term investment funds through the STIF account. So I know that number has continued to rise, which is great news. and is driving our surplus. But through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Mr. Privatera.
Thank you, Pete Privatera, Director of Finance. You're right with respect to the main drivers of the surplus. If we look at it from the revenue perspective, there are three main drivers. One is the investment earnings. We're projecting to earn about $2.9 million more than our adopted assumption. And that could go up a little higher. We could probably go up maybe another $100,000 or $200,000. I hear the feds are going to be raising the interest rates again, so we'll see. You know, another driver is the $1.4 million that we received from the state of Connecticut as part of the municipal revenue sharing, which we knew we were going to get something, but we had no idea what the amount was, and we had to wait to the end of the first quarter until the state tabulated their tax receipts. The third piece of this is we're expecting to exceed our tax levy collection by about $2.4 million. We're doing very well in collection. We're going to exceed our collection rate. One of the additional components of this is related to tax appeals. We had to make some adjustments and some assessments as to what we thought we would and would not collect. But we're doing very well. We're exceeding our collection estimates, and we still have a few more months to go, and I think we'll end up collecting a little more. All in all, those three components add up to about $6.7 million in additional revenue. If you look on the expenditure side of the budget, there's really two main drivers. That's police and fire. If you put those two items together, the impact on the budget is about a deficit of $1.5 million. And for a variety of reasons throughout the course of the fiscal year, whether it was, they had vacancies that we were working to fill, whether it was overtime concerns, on the police side, whether it was, a series of events that required significant overtime, and, with respect to, traffic fatalities and that. And on the fire department, was it related to more training that was required with new firefighter paramedic personnel? I mean, there are a number of revenue accounts that fluctuate up and down. One of the accounts that we're not surprised to see, but we normally don't see it is, we're down in conveyance taxes and land record fees. Only because I think last year there were so many refinances going on, because before, when the interest rates were low, there was a lot of activity. Now it's kind of leveled off. I believe I heard the assessor say at one point in time that the housing stock for sale in West Hartford has diminished, only because when a house goes on the market, it's usually gone the next day. So it's good news, but some of those adjustments are down. Other adjustments are up. For instance, in leisure services program, revenue is up because now we're getting ready for the summer season, and a lot of activities are going on. A lot of programs are opening up for the full summer. And with respect to a lot of other of the small accounts that fluctuate throughout the year, I mean, that's going to happen normally, only because we're making assumptions at the beginning of the year. One additional account that we're keeping a close eye on is paramedic related revenue. We hired a new company to do our billing for us, and it took them a while to basically get everything in place so they can collect on behalf of the town. And we're showing a decrease in the paramedic revenue. The reason we're showing a decrease is we're not sure they're going to be able to collect that by the end of the fiscal year. We're sure it's going to be collected. So if we don't collect it by the end of this fiscal year, I'm sure we're going to collect it at the beginning of next fiscal year. So all in all, on the revenue side, we're doing very well, about $6.6 million more than we expected. And again, on the expenditure side, expenditures are over budget by about $1.5 million. primarily due to police and fire, as I discussed. There are some departments that have a surplus. The community development department has a surplus only because we expected some of the positions to be filled sooner than they were, so we budgeted for a longer period of time. I'm expecting that before the end of the year, we'll have a surplus in the Public Works Department. We're showing them at a slight deficit at this point in time, but now's the time of the year where we start to assess all their accounts and make sure that we have everything basically tallied, and I believe that will show up as a surplus. Department of Leisure and Social Services is showing a shortfall to exceed their budget. One of the components of that is basically they're basically gearing up on all of their programming that they're charging for. So they have to charge for these programs to get revenue to offset these programs, and that's one of the reasons why they're over budget. And again, we have some savings in private school transportation and private school nursing. Not significant, but again, as I said earlier, there are going to be fluctuations in a lot of these accounts over time. So all in all, as the town manager stated, we're in a very good position. My expectation is that this surplus will grow a little more before the end of the fiscal year, and we're not going to have to contend with any snowstorms or anything like that. But knock on wood, you never know. Not snow, but something else. But again, I think we're doing just fine, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Looking around the rectangle, not seeing too many questions. I guess this is a good problem to have. And I'm glad to see this happen inside. I mean, not great to see us collecting this much more revenue, but it's better than the other way. So appreciate that, and appreciate the input there here, and for folks, the report that is posted online is really helpful if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. But I don't see any other questions. And with that being said, does anyone have any items that they would like to discuss at the next meeting? Seeing none. No other comments. Wow. I will, without objection, I will make a motion to adjourn. Seeing none. Thank you all for this great meeting, and thanks for bringing the good news, Peter.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
You too.